In this class, we will discuss index notation and summation convention. It is a very powerful technique, but we restrict our discussion to Cartesian tensors in Euclidean spaces. Okay, so basically we will look at it, three-dimensional spaces, but we can generalize to even to d dimensions. All right. So if you write a vector A, which is equal to AXI plus AYJ plus AZK, where I, J, K are the unit vectors in the usual sense. Okay, so now I mean you can write it in the component form, like we can say that the components of the vector A is going to be equal to AX, AY, AZ. Okay, so now instead of writing this way, I am going to change my notation as A1, A2, A3. Here I mean my AX is I am denoting it as A1 and AY as A2 and AZ as A3, or X goes to 1 and Y is 2 and Z is 3. Okay. All right, and now suppose that you have two vectors A and B. If you have two vectors A and B and the components of A, that will be AX, A1, A2, A3, and the components of B is going to be B1, B2, B3. Okay. So if you wanted to define, you know what is A dot B, right? A dot B, which is equal to generally you write it as AX BX plus AY BY plus AZ BZ, and in our notation it will be A1 B1 plus A2 B2 plus A3 B3. All right. So or you can write this as equal to summation over I equal to 1 to 3 AI BI. This is the way you can write A dot B. Okay. So just keep it like this, and suppose you have two matrices, for example. I mean, say I am restricting myself to 2 cross 2 matrices because it's quite easy to handle. I mean, very easy to write rather. I mean, so you have a matrix A which is equal to A11, A12, A21, A22, and you have another matrix B which is equal to B11, B12, B21, B22. Okay. So if you wanted to calculate AB, the product AB, so you see AB which is equal to A11, A12, A21, A22, and B11, B12, B21, B22, and I am calling this as C. Okay, and the matrix C, so C is going to be equal to, you can see that it will be A11, B11 plus A12, B21, and the next one will be A11, B12 plus A12, B22. Okay. So that will be B22, and this component will be equal to A21, B11 plus A22, B21, and the last component will be A21, B12 plus A22, B22. This will be the matrix. I mean, you know, this is just the matrix multiplication. Now let's see that what is C11. You can see that your C11 is this, right? C11 which is equal to A11, B11 plus A12, B21, and this can be written as summation a 1 I b I 1, summation I equal to 1 to 3. You can see that, right. So, if you sum it over, when I is 1, you will get a 1 1 b 1 1 and plus a 1 2 b 2 1, because here I mean your I I 1 to 2, I mean you have to specify that I is equal to 1 to 2. Okay. All right. So, what will be your C 1 2? C 1 2 is going to be summation over I equal to 1 to 2 a 1 I b I 2. That will be the case, and if you C 1 similarly C 2 1 is going to be equal to summation over I equal to 1 to 2 a 2 I b I 1. Similarly, C 2 2, that is going to be equal to summation over I equal to 1 to 2 a 2 I b I 2. Okay. Or you can write an general Cij. Your Cij is going to be equal to summation over some k, which is equal to 1 to 2 a I k b k j. This will be the elements of Cij. I can take values 1 and 2. Similarly, j can also take 1 and 2. Okay. So, this will be your Cij. If you want to get C 1 1, so you take this will be, this I will be 1 and j will also be 1. Okay. So, you will get a 1 b 1 1 plus a 1 2 b 2 1. Okay. So, that is okay. All right. And now if you wanted to, if it is a if A and B are 3 cross 3 matrices, the only difference is going to be k equal to 1 to 2. Okay. If you have 1 to, instead of 1 to 2, you will have 1 to 3, and if you have any n cross n matrix, so you will have k is equal to 1 to n, I mean that will be the case. Okay. Now I will introduce what is called the Einstein summation convention. Okay. So, there are 3 important points, and the first point is that, and you generally will have equations like this, right. So, if you are in an equation in an equation, if an index appears once in LHS, it must appear once in RHS, and such indices are called free indices. Okay. Here I mean, if for example, here you can see that this Cij, in this equation you can see that I appears once in the left hand side, and it exactly appears once in the right hand side. Similarly, j appears once in the left hand side. So, and you can see that j appears once exactly in the RHS also. Okay. So, both I and j, these indices are free indices. Okay. And now the second point is that in an equation, if an index appears twice in LHS or RHS, that index must sum over, and such indices are called dummy indices. Dummy indices. Okay. So, it says that if you, in an equation whether in RHS or LHS, if an index appears twice, then such indices has to be summed over, and such indices are called dummy indices. Okay. Here you can see that I mean in the left hand side you do not have any dummy index, because there is no I appears once, j appears once, and whereas if you look at the right hand side, you can see that the index k appears twice. Okay. And in such cases, I mean what the indices must be summed over, and then you do not need this anymore, this summation. So, you can if you use Einstein summation convention, you can peacefully write Cij, which is equal to Aik Bkj, and the summation is implicit here, because it says that if an index appears twice, it must be summed over. That means Aik Bkj, here k is a dummy index and it must be summed over, that then you will get exactly the same result. Okay. So, that is the second point, and the third point is that if an index appears thrice or more than thrice, then you can say that you can conclude that you did a mistake. Okay. So, I mean either the index can appear once or twice. If it appears more than twice, I mean if it appears 3 times or 4 times, and then you can say that you clearly you did a mistake, and that is the point. Okay. So, with this, so let us try to write A dot B. So, A dot B you can write it as AI Bi. So, here you can see that there is a dummy index which sums over. So, when if it generally in this 3 dimensions, so I is equal to 1 2 3, right. So, it will clearly tells you that I equal to A11 B A1 B1 plus A2 B2, this is equal to A1 B1 plus A2 B2 plus A3 B3. All right. And similarly, I mean the matrix product which I told you, Cij, the Cij which is equal to, I mean previously we did know that A, and that is A I K B K J, and this is enough. Okay, to the product you can write it like this. Okay. Now, I will introduce what is called I need to introduce 2 objects. They are basically isotopic tensors, and the first one is the Kronecker delta, and the second one is called the Levi-Civita. First one is the Kronecker delta. Okay. So, I will define Kronecker delta Ij, which is equal to 1 if I equal to j, and equal to 0 if I not equal to j. And you can see that if so, basically if you are working in 3 dimensions, so I and j runs from 1 to 3. Okay. So, delta 1 1, which is going to be equal to 1, which is equal to delta 2 2 is equal to delta 3 3, whereas delta 1 2 equal to delta 2 1 is equal to delta 3 1 all equal to 0, because if I equal to j you will get 1, else you will get 0. Okay. And but what is delta II? But delta, so you may immediately say that delta II is 1, but see that you have Einstein summation convention here. This index is I is a dummy index, so you will get this is equal to delta 1 1 plus delta 2 2 plus delta 3 3, and it is going to be 3. And if it is in 3 dimensions, you will get 3. If it is in 2 dimensions, you will get 2, and if you have any d dimensions, you will get d. That is delta II. That will be equal to d. Okay, in d dimensions. All right. Now I will introduce the other object. Okay, so I'll introduce one more thing. I suppose you have delta ik, delta kj, and this must be equal to delta ij. So I'll show you how it. Okay, so you can see that here there's a dummy index which is k, and that must be summed over. So you will get delta 1. If it is in 3 dimensions, you can see that delta, it will be delta 1 1, delta 1 I1, delta delta 1 j plus delta I2 delta 2 j plus delta I3 delta 3 j. Okay, and suppose that if your I equal to 1 and j equal to 1, and then what will you get? You will get it as delta 1 1, delta 1 1 plus here delta 1 2, delta 2 1 plus delta 1 3, delta 3 1, and delta 1 1 is 1, this is 1, so you will get 1, and here you have delta 1 2, delta, this is 0 and this is 0. So if your I equal to 1, j equal to 1, you will get this is equal to 1. Okay, and now we will take other options. And suppose that I equal to 1 and j equal to 2, and in that case you will get your delta this will be equal to delta 1 1, delta 1 2 plus delta 1 2, delta 2 2 plus delta 1 3, delta 3 2. So delta 1 1 is 1, but delta 1 2 is 0. Here delta 2 2 is 1, but delta 1 2 is 0. Here both the delta 1 3 and delta 3, so you will get 0. So when I equal to 1, j equal to 2, you will get 0, and similarly if I equal to 1, j equal to 3, you will get delta 1 1, delta 1 3 plus delta 1 2, delta 2 3 plus delta 1 3, delta 3 3. Okay, here also you can see that delta 1 1 is 1, but delta 1 3 is 0. So here delta, both the delta 1 2 and delta 2 3 is 0. Here also delta 3 3 is 1, but you will get 0. And so let us take now for I equal to 1 and j equal to I equal to 2, j equal to 2. In that case you will get, you can see that you will get 1. So from all this, I mean, you can evaluate the other elements of that, but you can see that when I equal to j, you will get 1, or if I not equal to j, you will get 0. That means this object delta ik into delta kj is nothing but delta ij. Okay, so this is a very important result. Delta ik into delta kj is equal to delta ij. All right. Okay, so now I will introduce what is called the Levi-Civita. Okay, so this is denoted by epsilon I j k. This is a completely antisymmetric tensor. Okay, by completely antisymmetric in the sense that if you exchange any two indices, then you will get a minus sign. Okay, so I mean, let me start with an object which is let us take a matrix which is antisymmetric. So suppose that if A is a matrix which is antisymmetric, then what does it say? It's ijth component Aij which is equal to minus Aji, or you can say that suppose you have a matrix A11, A12, A21, A22. If it is antisymmetric, then Aij must be equal to minus Aji. Then what does it say? A11 must be equal to minus A11. Then the only possibility is that this is 0. And similarly, A22 is equal to minus A22, that is 0. And if it is A12 is here, then A21 must be equal to minus A12. Okay. So you can see that for an antisymmetric matrix, all the diagonal elements are zeros, okay, and whatever appears on the upper diagonal will the lower diagonal will be the negative of that. Okay. So all the diagonal elements are 0, and then A12 here because it is 2 dimensional, right? And if for example, if you have a 3-dimensional object, then you can 3-dimensional matrix which is antisymmetric, or 3 cross 3 matrix which is antisymmetric, then you can see that all the diagonal elements, all these 3 elements will be 0, and here you will have A12, and here you will have A13, here you will have A23, and here you will have minus A12, and here you will have minus A13, and here you will have minus A23, and this will be the form of an antisymmetric 3 cross 3 matrix. Okay, so you can easily count, and now let us count the number of independent elements. So if you take this 2 cross 2 antisymmetric matrix, you have just one independent element, and if you take the 3 cross 3 antisymmetric matrix, you have look at these three is the number of independent elements, because this one is the negative of that. Okay. And suppose if you have an n cross n antisymmetric matrix, so what will be the number of independent elements in it? Okay. So again, I mean, you can see that if you have an n cross n elements, all the diagonal elements must be 0, and whatever appears here, which whatever appears here, the elements over here will be the negative of the elements over there, okay, in the upper diagonal. So that means that altogether how many elements you have? You will have n square elements. Okay. In this matrix you have n square elements, and if you subtract out the diagonal elements, that means n diagonal elements will be there, that will be n square n minus n, and then what you get is the sum of the elements, the number of elements over the upper diagonal and the lower diagonal, excluding the diagonal elements. Okay. So the number of elements here will be just 2, or that is equal to n into n minus 1 by 2. So the number of independent elements in an antisymmetric n cross n matrix is going to be n into n minus 1 by 2. You can just check it when n equal to 2. Here you can see that n minus 1 will be 1. So 2 into 1 divided by 2, that will be just 1, this element. When n is equal to 3, you will have 3 into 2 by 2. So you will have 3 elements. So in 4 dimensions you will have 4 dimensions you will have 4 into 3 divided by 2, that is going to be 6. Okay. So it goes like that. Okay. And now for the sake of completion, let me count the number of elements in a symmetric matrix. What do you mean by a symmetric matrix? A symmetric matrix, suppose you have a matrix A whose elements Aij is equal to Aji. That means, I mean, if you have a matrix whose transpose is equal to, in the previous for an antisymmetric, A transpose is equal to minus A, and here for a symmetric matrix A transpose is equal to A itself. That is what it means. Alright. This is for a symmetric matrix. Or in the index language you will have Aij is equal to this for a symmetric matrix Aij equal to Aji, or for antisymmetric matrix it will be Aij equal to minus Aj I. Aij is equal to minus Aj I. Okay, so let us count the number of independent elements of a symmetric n cross n matrix. For a symmetric, I mean, let us take a 2 cross 2 matrix. As if it is a symmetric matrix, you will have, as I said, A11, A12. If you take a 2 cross 2 as example, A21, A22, like this, right? Okay. So in this context, you can see that if it is a symmetric matrix, Aij must be equal to Aj. That means A12, A21 is equal to, this will be the form. Okay. So if you have, but diagonal elements, I mean, there is no restrictions over the diagonal elements. In the antisymmetric matrix, it was 0. Okay. So when you write an n cross n matrix, what you can see is you will have diagonal elements, and whatever appears here that will appear in the lower diagonal as well. So the number of independent elements, that will be equal to the total number of elements n square minus the diagonal elements, and then so then you will get the elements, the number of elements over here and here. Okay, and then if you divide it by 2, you will get the number of elements here plus the diagonal elements will be n. Okay, this will be the diagonal. So you can see that what you need to have is the total number of elements is n square. Here is 2, so it will be 4. N square will be 4, and out of 4, I mean, so you subtract out the diagonal elements, 2 elements, 4 minus 2, and then you divide it by 2. So you will have just one element. Okay, this element, and then you add the diagonal elements to it. So you will get 3. Total 3 is the number of independent elements here, right? So you can see that this is going to be equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. So n into n plus 1 by 2 is the number of independent elements in a symmetric matrix. For n equal to 2, you will get 3, and n equal to 3, you will get 3 into 4 divided 3 into 4 divided by 2. So and it goes like that. So we were talking about the Levi-Civetta tensor actually. Okay, so I told you this is completely anisymmetric tensor. That means if you exchange any two indices, you will have a negative sign. Before I go, I mean, and count the number of independent elements in it, before that, let us try to see how many elements are there altogether. Okay. So you know that your I, because you work in 3 dimensions, your I runs from 1 to 3, j runs from 1 to 3, k runs from 1 to 3. So you will all the stuff with epsilon 1 1 2, it goes all the way up to epsilon 3 3 3. Epsilon 3 3 3. So you altogether you will have how many elements will be there? You will have 27 elements. Okay, and suppose that if you are working in 4 dimensions, then epsilon ijk, how many elements will be there? I mean, I'm not talking about Levi-Civetta or anything. I'm just telling that if you have a tensor ijk k in some arbitrary tensor a ijk in 4 dimensions. In 4 dimensions, it is going to have you will have 4 raised to 3, that many elements. That means 64 elements will be there in it. And if you, so basically you will, and you can see that the number of indices. So here, I mean, that's you can roughly take it as the rank of the tensor. So it will be 3 here. Okay, and the dimension. So d raised to the rank will give you the number of elements. And for example, if you take Aij, it's a matrix basically, right? So if it is in 3 dimensions, you will get 3 dimensions, you will get 3, and the rank is 2. So you will have 9 elements. So you know that in a 3 cross 3 matrix, you will have altogether 9 elements. And if you say if some Aijk, then if it is in 3 dimensions, for example, this same Aij, suppose you are in 4 dimensions, it will be 4 raised to 2, 16. So you know that in a 4 cross 4 matrix, you will have 16 elements. Similarly, I mean, so you can take it like this. The number of the dimension raised to rank will give you the number of total elements in it. Okay. Now, so you have altogether 27 elements. to begin with, and now I am imposing the constraint that this is completely antisymmetric. Completely antisymmetric means, suppose you take epsilon 1 1 1, sorry, let us take epsilon 1 1 2, it is a particular element, right. What is this quantity? But I told you, if I exchange any two elements, then there will be a negative sign. So it means that epsilon I j k, which will be equal to minus epsilon j I k, that means I exchange I and j. So then there will be a negative sign, that is what it means. Any two indices, similarly I can say that here if I exchange I and k, then that will be k j I with a minus sign, okay. Or you can say that, I mean, if you do any permutation number of if you are performing an even number of permutations, then you will, okay, so just leave that there, I mean, so we will come back to it later, okay. So if you exchange any two indices, then there will be a negative sign, and that is the whole point. And if that is the case, suppose you take 1 1 2, epsilon 1 1 2, so if I exchange these two elements, the first element and second element, then that will be equal to minus of epsilon 1 1 2. This is possible only if epsilon 1 1 2 is 0, okay. So epsilon 1 1 2 must be equal to 0, okay. And similarly epsilon 1 2 2, what is epsilon 2 2? 1 2 2, I mean, if I exchange these two elements, then that must be equal to epsilon 1 2 2 itself. So again epsilon 1 2 2 is 0, because you can, so I mean, if you have any of these indices are repeating, that means if two indices are same, then it will be 0, okay. So the non-zero elements in epsilon I j k are the, I mean, epsilon 1 2, all the elements, all the indices must be different, and that is then only it will be 0. And it is not only epsilon 1 2 3, but its other permutations. How many permutations are there? We will have 6 permutations. So epsilon 1 2 3, and then epsilon say 3 1 2, and then you will have epsilon 2 3 1, and then you will have epsilon 1 3 2, then you will have epsilon 2 1 3, then you will have epsilon 3 2 1, and only these 6 elements will be non-zero out of this 27. So altogether you have 27 elements, but only 6 of them is non-zero because of this stringent symmetry condition, antisymmetric condition, okay. So let's now suppose if I take epsilon 1 2 3 equal to 1, suppose I give if I fix my epsilon 1 2 3 as 1, then I mean what you can see is epsilon 3 1 2, okay. How you make epsilon 1 2 3 epsilon 3 1 2 from epsilon 1 2 3, okay. So what I do is I will take this guy, and first I will exchange, I need to get 3 1, I will, okay, I will exchange the first and third element, then I will get epsilon 3 2 1, but at the cost of a negative sign, okay. If I exchange these two, then that will be a negative sign there. So epsilon 3 2 1 is minus 1, and then what I need is epsilon 3 1 2, I mean I need to do one more exchange, that will, so that will result epsilon 3 1 2 is going to be plus 1. So this is plus 1, and epsilon 3 1 2, that is also 1, and epsilon 2 3 1, okay. Now let us look at epsilon 2 3 1. So 1 2 3 is 1 2 3 is 1, epsilon 1 2 3 is 1, what I need is 2 3 1, 2 3 1. So what I do is I will exchange these two first. So epsilon 2 1 3 is minus 1, and now I need 2 3 1, right, 2 3 1. So now I will exchange these two, so I will get epsilon 2 3 1 is again plus 1. So this will also be plus 1, okay. And now I will go for epsilon 1 3 2. So if I do exchange these two elements 2 and 3, then you will get a negative, you will get 1 3 2 and that will be, so this will be equal to minus 1, and epsilon 2 1 3 2 1 3. Okay, so this is already 1. So if I exchange 1 and 3, so you will have a minus sign. So this is also minus 1. So here you have epsilon 3 1 2 is plus 1. So 3 2 1 is minus 1. Okay, so if I fix epsilon 1 2 3 as 1, then epsilon 3 1 2 is 1, epsilon 2 3 1 is 1, and epsilon 1 3 2 is minus 1, epsilon 2 1 3 is again minus 1, epsilon 3 2 1 also negative 1. Okay, so these three elements, epsilon 1 2 3 equal to epsilon 3 1 2 equal to epsilon 2 3 1 equal to 1, and epsilon 1 3 2 equal to epsilon 3 2 1 is equal to epsilon 2 1 3 is equal to minus 1. Okay, so these are the non-zero elements of the epsilon ijk of the Lebesgue in 3 dimensions. Okay, so that's our idea. Okay, now let me see what I can do with this. So from here it is evident that if you are doing a even number of in this context epsilon ijk, you will have, if you have with epsilon 1 2 3 is 1, if you perform even number of permutations you will get plus 1, and if you perform odd number of permutations you will get minus 1. Okay,